So I'm just very confused, and not because this is a particularly confusing movie. There's actually nothing too confusing about this movie except its entire existence. And if you know me or have watched a lot of my reviews, I try to be very balanced about things. I don't make it my business to rip movies to shreds for no apparent reason. I try to be understanding and forgiving, especially when it comes to low-budget movies. But then you have movies like this where I just struggle to find anything positive to say. And if this was a low-budget debut effort by an inexperienced filmmaker, I wouldn't be too harsh, because in that context this movie makes perfect sense. And admittedly, this is a low-budget movie. How low-budget, I don't know exactly. But here's the thing, it's not made by an inexperienced filmmaker, it's made by Neill Blomkamp. And if the name doesn't ring any bells, he's the man behind the low-budget hit movie District 9 from 11 years ago. Now, truth be told, I was never the biggest fan of that movie either. It was an impressive film considering the budget, no doubt about that, and a creative debut effort. I'm not gonna try to take that away from the man, it just wasn't my favorite movie personally. But the success of that film gave him the opportunity to make a legit big budget Hollywood blockbuster, which was Elysium with Matt Damon, and that one turned out to be a little bit of a letdown, a bit underwhelming. Not a terrible movie by any means, but not quite the success one would have hoped for. So after that, Neill went back to his roots and made something a little bit more unique next. A film called Chappie that looked interesting, but I really didn't like it at all. And in the following years, Neill decided to take a step back and focus on making creative short films instead. Until now, and I actually had no idea this was even in the making before it was already out. But you know, Neill making a foray into horror films, that sounded interesting to me, so I pressed play. Unfortunately, my alarm bells started going off almost immediately, because the intro to the movie just came across as super cheesy to me. And things didn't get better from there because the flaws just kept piling up. And I mean, the film looks okay, but I wouldn't call the cinematography particularly good. The dialogue writing just comes across as a bit stiff and not very natural. The acting's not exactly on the level one would hope for either, to be honest. The score is pretty generic sounding, and yeah, all of these things just started adding up. And they give this movie overall a very amateurish feel that just doesn't make sense to me. And I haven't even mentioned the story here because I really don't even want to talk about it. It's just one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. It's so ridiculously dumb. I was starting to wonder if this whole film is a joke. And I never want to assume that. I feel that's genuinely insulting toward the filmmaker. But it was a legitimate question on my mind. Is this a joke? Is Neill Blomkamp trolling us? And I'm not even being facetious here, because I don't understand how a capable filmmaker could have made something this bad. I mean, honestly, this movie makes Chappie look like a Kubrick film in comparison. And I don't get it. How did this go so wrong on every level imaginable? It feels like some random aspiring filmmaker shot this over the course of a week with less than 100 grand, and then Neill decided to put his name on it to get it some attention. That at least would make sense, because nothing about this feels like the work of an experienced, creative professional. Now, the last time I really ripped on a movie, I believe it was Spiral, and its main sin was just being lazy. And to this movie's credit, it doesn't feel lazy. That is one thing I will say. It does not feel lazy. It feels like a movie made by people who didn't know what they were doing with limited resources, who also made an effort to do their best, at least. But knowing who's behind that, I don't know if that's actually better than a lazy cash grab. Because even if I've never been the biggest fan of his previous movies, I know he's a competent filmmaker capable of much better than this. And yeah, I don't know, I'm just confused, because this movie existing and being what it is doesn't make any sense to me. And it's easily one of the worst movies I've seen all year, so I'm just gonna give it a solid 3. And no, I would not recommend this one, you should definitely skip it. Or you could just ignore that and watch it anyway, after all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic.